My guest today is truly one of the greats. He worked as a sideman for many legends, but it was his band Tribal Tech that became a cornerstone of modern jazz fusion. He's obsessed with finding the perfect tone, loves cool song titles like Hillbilly in a Band, I Hate You, and COVID Vaccination, and continues to release outstanding albums like his latest effort, Carnival. A guitarist who is constantly developing, even though this year marks the 40 years since the release of his debut album, Spears. Welcome to this episode, Scott Henderson.
Thank you, Niels. It's good to be here. Thank you.
How are you doing, Scott?
Thanks for making this trip all the way.
Yeah, we're at your house.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. How are you doing, Scott?
I'm good. Good. Really good. Went to NAMM on Friday. We had fun. Hung out with John Suhr and all those great guys that worked for him. And, we had a great time.
We ran into each other at NAMM, and you told me, I want to talk about my album. Let's do that to begin with.
When you have a brand new album, it's nice to talk about it. Some people probably haven't heard it yet, but it's been out for a while. It's been out since February.
It's again quite an adventure, the whole album, right? I mean,
it's hard for me to differentiate between records. I mean, I kind of put the same kind of effort into each one, and no one knows how they're going to turn out. I mean, no one knows what they're going to write until they've written it. And it's interesting. It's a journey. Has that become having fun? That's the main thing.
That's what I heard you saying in another interview. I need to make fun. That's very important.
Absolutely.
For me, right?
Yeah. We're entertainers. I like to take myself seriously, but the more seriously I take myself, the more I screw it up. So it's best to come in it with an attitude of let's just have a good time. Let's have fun, and everything gets easier after that.
Is that something you had to learn throughout the years?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, when you're nervous or anytime you have really those negative kind of uncompassionate feelings towards yourself, you make things worse. And it's like a dichotomy. We all say we don't want to care because you play better and you just do everything better when you're not nervous, and you have the attitude like, I don't care. Mm-hmm. Let's just have fun. But the truth is we do care very much. Mm-hmm. So we have to kind of fool ourselves into just, releasing all those bad vibes and criticisms of ourselves and just have a good time. When you're having a good time, you're the most creative. You're the most relaxed.
Mm-hmm. So being relaxed, have you learned any tricks, so to say, to achieve just being relaxed? Because on tour, for instance, I can imagine stressful, right?
It can be stressful if you're playing a really bad sounding room. Like we're real obsessed with tone and great sounds. And of course, the objective is to make the concert sound as good as a CD. But if you're in a room where that's not going to happen, sometimes they put the subwoofers under the stage. And you have to argue with the sound guy to turn them down because the low bass frequencies just destroy everything, the subtleties of the music. So it can be difficult. And there's some nights where it just isn't going to happen. You're not going to have a good show because the sound is terrible. But I would say probably 80-90% of the time, we're able to overcome those things. We have little tricks that we can do to make it better. And,
but also mental state of mind, right?
That too, because if you had a bad sound check, you're going to be a little bit nervous going on stage. And then again, we've had some sound checks that were terrible. When people come fill up the room, it gets really nice. It gets more dead, gets more acoustically, correct for the music. And we have great shows. So, but it's mainly about just getting rid of that judgmental guy on your shoulder telling you that everything you do is bad, because we all have it, and it's there, and you've got to get rid of it. And you've just got to sort of relax, I think, just relaxation, and be there and not try to perform. I don't like the word perform because performance means judging. Like if you're going to perform, it means people are judging you and you're judging yourself.
Performing also sounds like acting.
Yeah.
Right? And you're just being you, I suppose, right?
I sort of feel like the better word is to participate. I'm going to go out there and participate in something that I find fun and enjoy, and I enjoy, And if I participate that, I'm having a good time and I'm relaxed and there's good vibes on stage, it just seems like the music flows better. Everybody's in a good mood.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I make mistakes, it's more like, oh, it's not like a first violinist who makes a clam in a classical concert
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's like, oh my God, they played the wrong note.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that kind of an attitude on stage, and I make more mistakes than anybody, but
well, what is a mistake anyway, right?
Well, it's just one of those things, and we're not perfect. So,
but that guy in the shoulder that you mentioned, has he helped you also?
Well, that guy needs to be there when you're done playing and you're practicing. Listen to a tape and go, oh, that wasn't a very good idea. Or that was, I could have improved that. Or, we all have to improve, and we're all striving to improve. But when you're in the act of playing, that's not the time to think about it.
Yeah.
That's the time where you should be relaxed and enjoying yourself and communicating with your fellow musicians and having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Later,
yeah,
when you're in your room, that's the time to be critical of yourself and say, well, I need to improve. I mean, I always thought a good way to look at it is that I'm good at what I do, but there's always room for improvement. If you look at it like that, not like I suck.
Mm-hmm.
And because when you look at it that way, you're never going to be happy.
There are artists who have it a lot like that.
And a lot of those artists end up being addicted to drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to mention any names, but there's a bunch of guys who basically had to medicate themselves because they hate themselves so much.
Mm-hmm.
They have to get into drugs to get over that self-hate.
Mm-hmm.
I never had to do that, so I'm lucky in that way.
I just mentioned it's this year marks the 40th anniversary.
I never knew that, but what about that?
But when you heard that 40 years, what crosses your mind?
I'm old.
But you seem young at heart, right?
Yeah. Oh, I've seen, I got to work with some people like Zawinul, was an old man when I was working with him, but I've never seen a younger spirit in the way he looked at life and music and stuff. I like to be like that. B.B. King's another one, he was touring until he was, I got to see B.B. King when he was playing with, his big band, but Jeff Beck opened for him with the trio.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of Jeff Beck's show, B.B. King came on and B.B. asked Jeff to come up and play. And Jeff played a solo, and B.B. said, you're going to stay here the rest of the night. And he made him stay the whole night. And it was really cool to hear Jeff Beck play that really traditional 1-4-5 blues with the horn section. Really fun. And B.B. was just having the time of his life. And I was just saying, man, that's how I want to be 90 years old.
Yeah. Just with the open spirit, right? Approaching opportunities.
I know another guy like that, John Pisano. He recently died. But he was a great jazz guitarist in LA, and he had guitar night every Tuesday night. And he always invited all the young guys, the fusion players and guys that played with, just more modern guys to play with him. And he was always inspired by listening to new concepts, never like an old fossil, but somebody who was open-minded and really liked to hear new things. And I always respected that about him. Plus, he was a great player as well.
Hey, but let's talk about the Scott that's even younger than you are now. Because that is also curiosity, right? To find new things out.
Yeah.
Did you always have that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not glued to the internet all the time, and I'm working on my own stuff. So it's not like I'm out there trying to find new talent all the time to listen to. But I do hear guys that are great, and I go, wow, man. I mean, amazing that kid is so good for being so young.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I was as young as him, I could barely make it through Brown Sugar without screwing it up. So,
are you mentioning anybody in particular?
Matteo
Mancuso, perhaps, or
what's that?
Matteo Mancuso.
He's great. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, very young. Man, when I was that young, I could never play like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's some young saxophone players that I know that I just can't think of names right now, but yeah, there's a lot of them. I remember when they had the Playboy Jazz Festival a few years ago, and they were playing an advertisement, and there was a guy playing through Giant Steps, just killing it. And they said, by the way, the guy you're listening to is in one of the local high school bands.
Wow.
It's like, what?
Wow. But that's talent, right?
Yeah. They're just learning young. They keep starting younger, and raising the bar.
But when you were young, were you talented? Like, did you instantly feel like, oh, this is something that comes easy?
I didn't feel like that, and I've never felt all that talent. I've just worked hard.
Okay, yeah.
But I've seen some of my students that I feel like have more natural talent than I ever did.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm not one of those people that believes that if you don't have talent, you can't work hard. And because I've seen students that can't even tap their foot to the music without even playing. And at the end of the year, their time is really good and they're playing really well. So it can be taught.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make big improvements if you work hard.
Can you tell me something about when you first started realizing that, okay, I have to work hard to become better?
Yeah, I think in my teens, because I've been lucky to be sort of involved in a guitar community ever since I was really little. Everybody on my street played guitar.
Oh, wow.
And I saw people improving faster than me. And I was like, wow, how did he get so good? And people, well, I practice all the time. It sort of did dawn on me that, oh, yeah, if you don't work at this, you're not going to improve very fast. So I got into practicing when I was young and in my teens. I was doing that 7-8 hour a day thing every day.
Sounds like a cool street to
and I
live
still
in.
do. I mean, if I have time to practice, I practiced for 6 hours yesterday, and I still enjoy practicing. It's fun.
Do you also still unlock new things that you
all the time?
Yeah. Can you mention something that you think? Oh,
well,
wow.
I mean, the point is to just go to places you've never gone before. Which is beyond, of course, learning the vocabulary from the masters is something we've all done, and I always tell my students, I mean, you can't learn in a bubble. You have to learn the vocabulary as played by all the great players before us, at least parts of it. And then you can go build on that from your own imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I've come up with a lot of my own stuff, but its roots are in listening to others, listening to the masters before me. But now that I know the vocabulary fairly well, my job now, I feel like, is just to come up with new stuff. And it could be based on what I've learned or not, but just to come up with stuff that I've never played before and keep experimenting and learn my fretboard better. Just learn. Guitar's not easy. It's not like a piano where everything's laid out. Piano has one middle C. We have 5. So it's a hard instrument.
Yeah.
So you have to learn the fretboard really well. And there are still, even at my age, there are still those little dark spots that happen every once in a while, or like, where was that note I was hearing? I couldn't find it. So I need to work on finding it so I don't make the same mistake next time.
I find it super intriguing that somebody like you is still approaching it like this, right? I mean,
I think we're students for the rest until we drop dead.
But that's a good attitude, right? I mean, there's no point on which you say, okay, now I'm done, right?
No.
That's the end of the line.
No, but even if you think that, I mean, I've heard players like, for instance, somebody like Tommy Emmanuel. I don't know how he could possibly be learning anything. That guy's so good, but yet I'm sure he thinks the way I do. I'm sure he thinks, I'm sure he still practices. I'm sure he still thinks he can improve.
Says everything takes a lot of effort.
Yeah. We all feel that way.
Yeah. Hey, so the young Scott was living in a cool street with a lot of other guitar players. How was the support of your parents when you started realizing, okay, this might be something I really want to do?
They were cool with it. They didn't know if I could make a living doing it. So I think they were pretty happy when they realized that I could actually support myself in this way. Because I think my dad wanted me to go into the auto parts business and take over his shop. He had a small chain of auto parts stores. And I learned a lot about cars, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to play music. And when he saw that I could make a living, he was all for it.
Yeah. And your mom?
Her too. Yeah.
Same. Okay. Did you talk with Jeff Beck about cars, perhaps?
No,
he was a big car lover, right?
I never met Jeff.
Oh, really?
I always wanted to meet him, but I never got to meet him.
So, and at one point, you got the support from your parents, and you were confident enough. Okay, I really want to study this properly. Can you tell me something about that phase?
Well, I went to college and I learned theory. we studied it. The college I went to wasn't really guitar oriented. It was more arranging.
Oh, yeah.
I did a lot of arranging for big band. We studied classical music, just the regular stuff, Mozart, Beethoven, real classical music studies. We had to write classical pieces in that style, right? But I sort of realized that it wasn't geared toward the kind of music that I really like. So I came to Los Angeles to study at Guitar Institute, where the emphasis was on jazz and hands-on guitar. And there were a lot of great teachers, Joe Pass, Joe DiOrio, so many good players there. Don Mock was a teacher there.
But what, having studied arrangements and classical music, did that give you something on the guitar as well? Like,
not really. Okay. That's what I'm saying. It wasn't really a guitar school.
Yeah, but still, if you learn about
you're learning
arrangements,
it, but I never had the desire to be a classical guitarist. I always wanted to be more of a jazz, rock guitarist, blues. Those are the three kinds of music that always appealed to me the most: jazz, rock, and blues.
So you had one-on-one lesson with Joe Pass?
Lots of time. In fact, I used to play with him all the time.
Can you remember the first time you stepped into his room?
I can't, but I just remember him being kind of a gruff teacher, but a very down-to-earth teacher. I remember a lot of times I would play something and he would look at me and go, "What the fuck did you play that for?" Kind of like, grumpy old man type of thing. But then he actually asked me to teach his son because his son wanted to learn more fusion stuff. So I used to go to Joe Pass's house every week and teach his son guitar. Because I don't think Joe wanted to do it.
That's funny.
That was kind of funny.
Go to Scott, he said.
Yeah, just like, get this guy over here. But Joe was cool, and Pat Martino was also teaching there, though Pat Martino wasn't the best teacher. He was a great player. I used to just record him playing, but he wasn't a down-to-earth teacher like Joe. If you ask Pat, what do you play over an A minor 7 flat 5 chord? He would say something like, "You should go out under the stars and look at, try to find Jupiter." He was one of those kind of, but he had some health problems. He had a brain aneurysm. He was always very mystical type of cat, but great player. And you didn't need him to say anything. He was there in the room. You could just go in there and record him playing and go home and listen to it and learn a lot.
Did you learn how to teach from them also? Because you learned about your guitar, right?
Down-to-earth guys, because I'm a very down-to-earth teacher, and I believe that teaching is an art, just like playing. And if you're not able to come down to the student's level and make them really understand what's going on, then you're not a good teacher. So I consider myself a very good teacher, and a lot of people pay big money to study with me, not because I'm a great player, because there are a lot of great players who can't teach, but I know how to teach. I know how to make it easy.
What's a good teacher according to you? What does he need?
Don Mock was one of my better teachers, and I learned a lot of stuff that I teach other people from him.
Sorry, I let me rephrase it because it goes lost in translation sometimes. What are qualities a good teacher needs to have?
Well, I mean, you need empathy. You need to know that this guy's struggling with something that is nothing to you, but you've got to get down to his level and remember what it was like when you were learning that same thing. And what's the easiest possible way you can make this guy understand what's going on?
Yeah.
Very down to earth, very nuts and bolts. Take all the mystery out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it's funny because I talked with Alan Hines a couple of days ago, and he's also teaching there, right?
Yeah, Alan is a good teacher.
And he said, so Scott could be tough sometimes on his students. Do you agree, or?
Yeah, I mean, if I see someone not doing the work and they need to do the work, but it's like you can't go. You want to walk, you got to learn how to crawl first.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you don't have these basic concepts down, I can't take you to the next place. So you got to do the work.
You always have the goal in mind, right?
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. So you must have had so many students throughout the years.
Thousands. Yeah.
What do they give you back as a player?
Well, I mean, not much.
Well, does that happen?
I do it for money, but there have been some students that are inspiring because they're really good, and I've learned things from them as well as taught them things. So I've had some pretty high level students. I used to sub for Bruce Foreman over at USC, and some of these guys are as good as anybody. Young kids, and they're in their 20s, and they just, a couple of them play rings around me. I just thought, why are you taking lessons from me? I should be taking lessons from you. But I think I managed to show them a few things they didn't know, and I definitely learned some things from them too. So, but that's not normal. I mean, I'm teaching people that are intermediate, medium to intermediate students. Yeah.
Hey, and then early 80s, you started learning at GIT, it was called, and Tribal Tech album started a little later than that, right?
I think so. Yeah, I'm not very good with remembering what happened in what year, but
did you feel at that time, this is for me a good balance to be a performing artist, recording artist, and to have that teaching part as well in my life, in my professional life?
Well, teaching has always been something that almost all musicians do, not only to bring in more income, but it's just, if you get to a certain level, people start asking you to take a lesson. It's so normal. And, I mean, nothing against people that don't want to do it, because there's some players that just have no interest in teaching whatsoever. They just don't want to do it. I've never had any problem with it. I enjoy it. So, because it sort of helps me too. It's even basic stuff. It's good to go over it. It doesn't hurt. It's almost like practicing in a way.
Yeah, exactly. But then
you may not be practicing stuff that's on a higher level than you want to be, but even practicing basic stuff is still good for anyone at any level. So yeah, I don't consider it a waste of time, and you make money doing it. But it's never been my priority. My priority has always been original music and writing, becoming a better player. I would rather be taking lessons than giving them. And I have taken many.
Yeah. Hey, so with Tribal Tech, you started releasing your own album, so to say, and then also under your own name, of course. If you compare writing your own music with the jobs as a sideman that you did, no, maybe let me rephrase that. I can edit sometimes.
That's okay. Yeah, sure.
And I have to translate quickly. If you look back on that time, were there any things that you think, I wish I didn't do that?
Always. I mean, I don't think anybody's happy with their previous work, because you learn as you go. So everybody's a work in progress. So when you look at something you did 4 or 5 albums ago, there's always going to be stuff that you hear that go, I shouldn't have done that, or I should have gotten a better tone here, or I can't believe I recorded something that sounds that awful. But that's growing. If you loved everything you do in the past, I don't think you would grow very much. I don't mind hearing. Actually, I don't ever listen to anything I did in the past, to tell you the truth. And even when I do a brand new album, I end up not listening to it after it's been out for a little while. I never hear it again, but because I'm on to the next thing. And, but I still like Carnival, I actually still like the last 4 albums. I like Well to the Bone. I like, Vibe Station, People Mover, Carnival. I think those are my 4 best records. And, I'm not to the point where I hate them at all. I like them
because it sounds like fun as well. Those
it
albums,
is. It's
right?
a lot of fun. Yeah, it's just the best feeling in the world to write your own music and get to record it and get to go on the road and play it, and being appreciated. It's I'm eternally grateful for that, for sure.
And you have 2 French players, right?
They're great. They're Romain Labaye and Archibald Ligonier, and they're in Paris.
How did you meet them?
For about 5 years.
Can you tell me about how they can?
I met Romain through my agent, who asked the bass amp company, Mark Bass. They've got a lot of good players in the Mark Bass family that play those amps, because I guess, according to bass players, they're one of the best amps. So Romain was I heard him and I was just like, wow, this guy's great. So it was kind of no brainer there. And I heard Archie because Romaine had mentioned him, and also Scott Kinsey had played with him before, and I got a lot of good recommendations about him.
And you basically do a lot of things yourself, right? When you record the album, also the why did you choose to take control, so to say?
Well, without saying anything bad about my fellow musicians, some of them, especially jazz musicians, they kind of go into the studio and play, and then after that, they're done, and they don't have any technical knowledge. They leave it in the hands of the engineers, and if the engineers suck, you have a shitty sounding record. You know, not everybody is good in this business. A lot of engineers are really bad, actually.
And you said, oh, I'm obsessed with tone.
I'm just obsessed with things sounding like they're supposed to, you know, and I've heard a lot of records that sound, in my opinion, they sound awful. And if someone put a little more effort into it, they sounded much better. So I don't mind putting in the effort. So I'm not saying I do it all by myself, but I work with people who know what they're doing. Like Alan Hertz is an incredible engineer. He's also the drummer on Vibe Station, but he also engineered the next two albums, and he's an incredible engineer, and I rely on him to do the things that I can't do myself. I'm pretty good at recording guitar, but I don't know very much about compression on the drums. I don't know a lot about reverb. Like Alan will put a completely different reverb on every single guitar track in order to separate it and make it sound clearer. I don't think I'd know how to do that. Alan will come in and he'll listen to all my guitar tracks and go, Scott, you can't make every single guitar track sound that fat, because when you put it all together, it's a mess. So he'll take little frequencies out of guitar parts, and at the end of the day, everything's clear. You can hear every single thing that every single guitar part is doing, because I love to layer guitars. I'm a big Jimmy Page fan. He did it in Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Richie Blackmore did it in Deep Purple.
So like 4 or 5 or maybe, right?
Oh, there might be 6 or 7 guitars going on at one time. You know, Mike Landau does really great guitar layering. And, you know, I figure it's an album. I could just go in there and record a trio live like we sound on stage, but I like to take advantage of the fact that I have all these sounds and stuff, and why not layer and make things sound bigger? Like sometimes, you know, a guitar player can play only 4 or 5 notes at a time, but I can have another guitar part that's way higher up on the neck and play the same voicing or the same rhythm, but very much like a piano player, you know. I'm playing this part, second guitar's playing this part, and it just makes everything sound so huge, especially when you separate it in stereo. And, you know, so it's just basically orchestration, you know, and arranging after the fact, after the composition. Right.
Was there any moment in your career that you really started realizing to make such a good tone, both live on stage, but or also on an album, that's something super important for you?
Well, I mean, tone has always been important to me, because if you don't like your sound, you're not going to be very happy and inspired to play. You know, when a piano player sits down and plays a perfectly in tune, beautiful grand piano, I'm sure that's inspiring. And, you know, maybe there's not quite as much that could go wrong with a grand piano that's been taken care of. But with the guitar, there's about 1 million things that can go wrong. You know, bad speakers, bad amp, bad cables, bad this, bad. And every little component of a guitar sound it may not seem important, but when you put it all together, it is important.
Is that also the charm of the guitar, you think? That it's such a, I don't know, it's not easy to grasp.
It's wood.
Yeah,
it's wood, like a violin. I mean, every piece of wood sounds different. When John Suhr makes me a new guitar, he hasn't in a while because I'm really happy with my guitars, but he would make 5 same exact wood from the same batch, same exact hardware, yet every single guitar would sound different because the wood's different. It's a different piece from a different part of the tree. So I would pick the one that I like the best and And that could take hours sometimes, being really nitpicky.
Yeah.
That, the weight has a lot to do with it, because Stratocasters, if they weigh around 7.5 pounds, you get about the best combination of bass, mid-range, and highs. And usually when they're heavier, they're bassy and trebly with not much mid-range. And if they're too light, they're all mid-range. So, John has this really cool little device. It's a little metal, like small soup can, and it's called a table speaker. So you plug it into an iPhone. If you set it on a wood table or a glass table, the table becomes the speaker.
Ah, nice.
So when you set that on a guitar, if you put that guitar on the floor and you set it on the guitar, the music will sound different on each guitar.
Is that a way to really hear?
No, it's just for fun.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't pick a guitar in that way, but
no, because in that way you can really hear, okay, what's the guitar and not what's the amp or what's the effects.
No, but I do play the guitar through the amp, and whichever guitar I feel like really just. Some guitars can have dead notes, and also the combination of the neck has its own tone. So sometimes a certain combination of the neck and the body is a magic thing that just happens. The guitar resonates and plays really well, has great tone.
What happens with you if you find something of which you think, this is great?
Well, I have them. I have like about 6 of them that I think are really great guitars. I have a favorite one that I use to record, and I have a favorite one that I play live. So, but all the rest of them are great too. They're just great in different ways. Some are a little brighter, some are a little darker.
And is it something you, even though you like that guitar, is it something you have to conquer every time or become friends with?
Well, it depends on the room. With electric guitar, the room has a lot to do with what's going on. In a good room, if you have a great guitar and a great amp, you're going to be fine. In a bad room, even a great guitar and a great amp's not going to help you, because the frequency of the room just destroys everything. You can have the best guitar and amp in the world, but if the room sucks, it's nothing that the guitar and amp is going to help. It's just, the room has a lot to do with it. Any amp and any guitar is going to sound different in each room, the acoustics. And when I'm recording and my studio sounds exactly the same, and I know it, and I know what it sounds like, and I know how to dial everything in according to the acoustics of my studio. So that's easy because it's a constant. Live, there's no such thing as a constant.
Yeah, talking about live, you mentioned often that you wouldn't mind playing every night, right?
I love playing every night. Nights off are boring. Yeah.
So you're going to go on tour in Europe in a bit. What has changed touring? Because as an instrumental guitarist, it's I can imagine it's not always easy, right? Because in a way, it's a niche, right?
Every night is a challenge. I think the main challenge for me is just the creative process. It's easy to play the songs. I mean, once you've played the songs, you're on automatic pilot. I mean, you could do that with your eyes closed, and it's so easy because you do it every night. The point is in the improvised sections of the song, because my music is sort of 50-50. It's like sort of 50% composition, 50% completely free where you can play anything you want. My concentration is on the improvisation part. The composition part is easy. That's just, I can play the tune without making a mistake. So what? Anybody can do that. But when you get to the improvised section, can we make this sound different every night? Are we going to fall into the same trap every night and it's going to start sounding too similar? And, to try to come up with brand new stuff every night. I mean, no one can completely reinvent themselves every night. No one can, but you try anyway.
That's interesting.
Sometimes it's a complete failure.
But
sometimes you're really happy, but
that's interesting that's your approach. That's what you thrive on, right?
Yeah, but it also involves communication within the band, because if you just think about yourself, that would be extremely tough to do because you literally would have to reinvent yourself every night. But I'm not playing in a bubble. I'm playing with two other people. And, the bass and drums is very important. So rhythmically, things can be drastically different every night depending on how we approach playing with each other. So it's more of a band study or a band experience than just me up there playing by myself, me. It's all about me. If it was like that, it wouldn't be any fun. Yeah.
You talked about communication on stage. You mentioned also in some other interviews that you did share the stage with people you didn't particularly like.
Yeah, sure.
But how is that on stage? Does that reflect on stage as well? Or is it once you're making music, that's all gone? Or can you tell me something?
I'm not sure
about
I
that?
understand that question.
So for instance, you mentioned Chicoria you didn't particularly like. The guy, right?
No, but not as a person. Not,
but is
musically, the guy's a genius.
Yeah, of course. But on stage when you're playing with him, does that not liking him go out of the window and you are able to just properly communicate?
I didn't like anything about that band. No, it was also the music. Not him. He's a brilliant player, but the music that he was playing at the time was extremely commercial. It was almost like a Vegas band. I was not into it. Yeah. So that's not the kind of music I like. It was very much like playing the same exact parts every single night. Almost no improvisation outside of the parts. And the only time I improvise is when I played a solo, right? And that was, I guess, okay. I didn't really feel like he was even listening to me when I played solos. He was sort of more playing rhythm games, comping with the drummer. And it was just slow, like, let's get this guitar solo out of the way.
Yeah.
No, I didn't really enjoy that gig at all. But
able to improvise with band members, does it help if you like them, or do you need to like them?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you don't like someone as a person, it's going to be hard to play music with them. But that's very rare. I mean, I can name those people on 3 fingers, I think. Most of the people that I play with, I like them as people. And they also share my concept of listening to each other when we play and trying to make something happen as a group. And not just, the worst thing someone can say about you as a jazz musician is, yeah, that guy's a good player, but he just plays his shit and he doesn't pay any attention to anything else that's going on around him. That's a really, really, really bad thing to say about somebody. I don't want people saying that about me. Right? My attention is to aim my phrases at the guys in the band and see how they react to them, and me react to what they play back. And it's sort of like it's a conversation, right? Not all the time, but it's part of it.
Because at the same time, soloing can be addictive, you said, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to the records like, say, Nefertiti, if you listen to that band playing Footprints with Herbie and Wayne and Tony Williams and Ron Carter, I mean, that's where it comes from. Those are the guys who sort of invented that level of communication in jazz, right? Before that, bass player and drummer were more of a support role only. Bass player just played walking bass, drummer just kept the groove, But that band really brought another dimension, more space, more mysterious, more communicative, more conversational, So most of us who like this kind of music see where that all kind of came from. Miles was sort of the godfather of that kind of jazz. And then it sort of, it was, Weather Report was very inspired by that because Weather Report's kind of the same thing. You can tell that they're listening to each other. They're playing with a lot of space. They're playing more melodies than licks. Doesn't sound like bebop anymore. Right. So, and nothing, I don't have anything against bebop jazz at all. I like it, but it's not what I want to do.
But what helps you with getting into that state of listening? Because that's something you have to learn also, right? To realize or to really get it into your system. It's not a one-way direction.
Yeah, it's basically just it's a very simple concept. Just don't play so much. Leave some space.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but still you have to put your foot on the brake sometimes then, right? You have to be aware.
I mean, it's tempting. I think we all practice with our backing tracks sometimes, and backing tracks don't play anything back at you.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, it becomes a habit to just play and play and play and play and play and never take a breath and never, you can't play that way with real musicians. So you have to leave spaces. I see horn players playing a phrase and then putting their arms down at their sides. I don't see any guitar players doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make myself.
Julian Large told me that it helps him to sometimes let go of the guitar.
Let go of the instrument. And that space that you may seem to you that it's huge, to the audience, it's not at all.
Yeah.
It's not.
Because it's a scary thing to right? In the beginning, to let go.
I just saw Steve Vai doing it at a Beat concert. I saw it on video. Steve play a long line and then he just let it sit there and, let the musicians react to it. And I can remember a time where I'd see Steve Vai and he would never play a rest, but I think he's grown and improved and he sounded great. He's really playing some cool stuff and leaving lots of space. And it was cool to see that.
Leaving lots of space. Before we wrap this up, I'd like to look into the future with you. So the tour is coming up. You released an album last year. Are you already composing new stuff?
Not yet. I've had some difficulty like the last couple months. I tried to write a few tunes, but I just didn't like them. And the first test a new tune has to pass is, does it sound like something else that I've already written or that someone else has already written? And I didn't feel like these tunes passed that test, so I threw them away. But I'll keep trying. It gets harder.
I can imagine after a long career.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, I've written a lot of records, and then there's so many great musicians, that whole Donald Fagen, Steely Dan catalog, the whole Mahavishnu catalog, the whole Weather Report catalog, the whole Chick Corea catalog. I mean, it's just scary. It's very hard to write something that it doesn't remind me of something else. So as we go into the future, and I feel sorry for composers right now with every the 70s was a really great time.
And they have AI competition as well,
Yeah, the 70s was an amazing time when a lot of new music came out and it was all very original sounding. I don't hear that so much these days, but it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way it is. I guess almost every melody's been used by now.
It's a scary thought in a way. Like if you look into 100 years in the future, what's going to happen?
I don't know. But I sort of feel like if I really work hard, I think I can do it again. But it may take longer, whatever. It took me, I don't know, between albums, between People Mover and Vibe Station and Carnival, there were, I think, 3-4 years in between those records. It takes a long time. Even when you start a tune, it could take me a month to finish because I'm hearing things that, maybe this section is cool, but maybe this section doesn't meet. In fact, on Vibe Station, Calhoun and Festival of Ghosts started out as the same piece. And I kept working on it and I go, something's wrong. Maybe there's too much information. So I broke them apart and they became two separate tunes. That happens. All kinds of things can happen. You might take a section out of one tune, put it in another one, or you might just completely erase a section or get to the point where you're feeling like, yeah, this tune's almost done, but there's still some harmonic tweaks that need to be made. So you have to, and who knows how long it's going to be before you find those chords that really satisfy you. Right? So it's a work in progress, and it's hard for, I think, any composer to know when a tune is finished. Like, okay, that's it.
Do you consider yourself as a perfectionist?
I don't know. I just try to make things the best I can. If that's a perfectionist, I'm certainly not happy with the process sometimes because it's frustrating. But some composer said, I can't remember who said this, but some composer said, if you're having a great time writing, you're probably writing a piece of shit.
So you just mentioned you're having a hard time, so it must be great, right?
Hopefully. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard sometimes. It's frustrating because you feel like you're almost there, but something's wrong and it's just bugging you, you know, and you want to try to fix it. But
yeah, do you chase it then, or do you think, oh, I let it go and it will come to me?
Sometimes it is better to let it go, take a week off, and come back to it with fresh ears.
Yeah. Because in a way, it's a muse also, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's good to have 2 or 3 tunes going at once. So if you are having a really hard time with one, you can leave it and go to another tune. Kinsey taught me to do that and just, you know, have some different projects going on at the same time. So if one is really bugging you, take a break from it for a week and work on something else.
It reminds me of a quote of another composer. You said in another interview, you said the toughest part of composition is the application of the ass to the chair.
That is so true. Very hard to start. In fact, when I started composing for my next project, it was almost impossible to make myself sit down because I knew, you know, what's ahead of you. You know, you're going to have to face yourself every day, be dissatisfied, you know, have days where you didn't come up with anything. And it's a tough road. But as long as you just remember that it's the road, it's not the destination. If you think about the destination, you're always going to be miserable. But if you just think about, hey, today I managed to write 3 or 4 chords and I like them. That's good.
But it's something magical, right? It's something tough, but you have to do it.
Yeah. I mean, there are composers I imagine that are more, they're quicker at it. I mean, Joe Zawinul is always going to be my idol as a composer. I heard Mozart could do this too, but I wasn't around to see it. But I saw Joe do it many times when I was at his house. He would sit down at the piano and just put the recorder on and start playing. And in 5 minutes, you got a song.
And a good song.
A good song. And I'm going like, wow, you know. So that has always inspired me. People that can just come up with, who have instant access to the harmony that's in their head. Now, the closest I've come to that is Carnival, because during Carnival, during COVID, and that's when I wrote most of Carnival, we all had time to practice. We weren't gigging. And the main practice that I was doing at home wasn't lines or transcription. It was just sitting there playing solo guitar, not because I want to be a solo guitarist, but I love listening to solo guitar, but I've never been that great at it. But just playing and seeing if I could realize what I heard in my head, trying to find on the guitar what I was hearing in my head. And I got much better at it in those 2 years. So a lot of the music on Carnival was written just like in real time, just like Joe did. Just sat down, started playing. Maybe I am not at the point yet where I can compose a whole song in real time, but I got a lot of 20-second, 30-second, 40-second, you know, passages that they're on the record exactly as I improvised them.
But that must be a cool feeling to realize, like, oh, this is some new way for me to do it.
It is, and it's a really fun way. It's sort of like the way tribal tech, some people don't feel that those were our best records, but tribal tech, we got a little tired of the composition thing about, you know, like, this guy's going to bring in a new tune. We all learn it. Now I'm bringing in a new tune. We all learn it. We thought, what if we just jam? But what if we take it a little bit past the old Miles Davis Bitches Brew concept, where you just turn on the tape machine and jam until the tape runs out, and then it's done. We thought, let's take it a step further. Let's jam until the tape runs out, but after, let's post-produce that music, cut it, paste it, create some new harmony that wasn't there before, and make those jams into more compositional kind of things. I don't know any other band that's done that. So that's kind of like our claim to fame, that we were the only band that ever tried that concept. Sometimes I felt like it worked, sometimes it didn't, but I'm really proud of this one tune on X. It's called Palm Moon Plaza. That's improvised from the very first note to the very end of the song with absolutely no overdubs. I'm really proud of that one because nobody knew. We were just using our ears, and that was one of the best jams that we had, where it actually sounds like a composed piece of music, and it's not. It's completely improvised from note one to the end.
But that's magical if you capture that moment in that way, right?
We had a few like that. We had a few tunes like that. Some ended up being just one chord vamps, and those aren't my favorite ones. Some of them are cool, but those aren't my favorite ones. My favorite ones are the harmonic ones. We're able to just listen. None of us has perfect pitch, but we have pretty good relative pitch. So when someone switched a key, we could kind of hear where it's going. Some of the best music that was played like that were the duets between Wayne and Joe. Joe would just play chords, and Wayne would improvise, and those duets are so beautiful, and they had such a great relative pitch, great concept of listening to each other, that some of those duets sound composed. Like The Orphan, for example, on 8:30, that was improvised, and it sounds just like as great a classical composition as anybody could have written. But that's how deep those guys were.
If I hear you talking, I'm curious to find out what you will come up with.
Well, we'll see. Hopefully something good. I hope.
Hey, for now, thanks so much, Scott Henderson.
It was a pleasure, man. Thank you. I hope I didn't talk too much.
No, that's the goal of this whole thing.
Okay.
Right?
Good.
And listeners also, thanks for listening.
Great.